Okay, so today we're doing lesson 13, guided practice, page 126 from the Ready Math instruction book. It says, study the example below, then solve problems 8 through 10. Okay, solve the following equation for r. 16.5 plus 1.5r equals 12 plus 2r. So look at how you can show your work. First thing they did was, let's see, what did they do? Oh, they multiplied both sides by 10. So they multiplied this side times 10 and this side times 10 to get rid of the decimals in this parenthesis. So in order to get rid of this decimal, they multiplied by 10. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And then they used the distributive property to get rid of the 10 on the outside. So they did like this, like I've been talking about. 10 times 16.5 gives you 165. 10 times 1.5 gives you 15r. And then on this side, 10 times 12 equals 120. And 10 times 2r gives you 20r. Then they subtracted 15r from both sides to get their r's together. And 15 minus 15 gives you nothing. So those cancel out. And they brought down the 160 down here. And 165 down here. On this side, 20r minus 15r gives you 5r, and then they brought down the 120. Now, in order to get 5r by itself, they have to subtract by 120 on both sides, and you can see how they did that, and they ended up getting 45, and they brought down the 5r. And the last step is to get r by itself. You have to divide by 5 on both sides. So that's what they did here, and then that gives you r equals whatever 45 divided by 5 is, which is 9, and they showed that in their solution down there at the bottom corner. So looking at number 8, it says 1/5 of a number plus 3 times the number is equal to twice the number plus 42. What is the number? So I'm going to just write down exactly what the problem says. It says 1/5 of a number, so 1/5 of a number, which we don't know what that number is, so I'm going to give that number a label x. So 1/5 of a number plus 3 times the number, 3 times that same number, which we labeled it x, so we're going to keep that the same. 3 times the number is equal to twice the number x, because we labeled that random number. We don't know what it is, but we labeled it x. So twice the number plus 42. So they give you a word problem, but you have to write it out what they're explaining. And that's what I did here. 1/5 x plus 3x equals 2x plus 42. What is the number? So in order to figure out what the number is, we have to get x by itself. We can start by doing multiple things. I think maybe the first thing we could do is just combine these two x's here. So 1/5 x plus 3x, which if you add those, you just get 3 and 1/5 x. Okay, so we have 3 and 1/5 x on this side of the equation, and we have that equals to 2x plus 42. Now we're going to subtract 2x from both sides to get the x's together. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So I'll get on this side, the 2x's cancel out. Now I have 42 equals, and on this side, 3 and 1/5 minus 2 leaves us with 1 and 1/5 x. Now, the best thing to do in this case, I think, would be to turn this into a mixed number. And we do that by multiplying the whole number times the denominator. So 1 times 5, and then adding the numerator. So 1 times 5 is 5, plus 1 is 6, and then we keep the same denominator. That's how we make a number and a fraction into a mixed number. So now I have 6 over 5x equals 42, and what I can do is multiply by the inverse on both sides. So I can multiply by 5 over 6 times 5 over 6. These cancel out, and then I'm left with x equals 42 times 5, 42 times 5, and then divided by 6. So again, like I was trying to say, sorry about that, is that 42 times 5 gives us 210, and then we're going to divide by this 6, which gives us 35. So 42 times 5 is 210, divided by 6 equals 35. So now, essentially, we got x equals 35. I do want to point out that, like we were doing in yesterday's lesson, they want us to check our work, so I'm going to do that here on the side. I'm going to try to make it as clear as possible. So I'm going to take my original equation and plug in 35 for x. So 1/5 times 35 plus 3 times 35 equals 2 times 35 plus 42. Okay, so 1/5 times 35 is the same thing as 35 over 5. And 35 divided by 5 is 7. So 1/5 times 35 gives us 7. Then we have 3 times 35, which I'm going to do here. 35 times 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 9. Plus 1 is 10. So 3 times 35 should be 105. And then that will equal 2 times 35, which is 70, plus 42. So on the right side, 70 plus 42, that gives us 112. And on the left side, 105 plus 7 gives us 112 as well. So this shows true statement, which means that our work matches what we started. It makes sense with what we started with. Okay, that's number 8. Let's move on to number 9 on page 127. Says, show 2 different ways to solve 1/4 x minus 5 equals 3/4 x minus 12. So let's start with one way of doing this problem. We could, let's just start. I'm going to rewrite it because it's the easiest thing for me to do, is 1/4 x minus 5 equals 3/4 x minus 12. Okay, first thing we could do is get our x's together. So I'm going to subtract 1/4 x on both sides. That's going to give me -5 equals 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4, which is the same thing as 1/2. So I'm just going to write 1/2 just to save time. So 3/4, again, I'm going to repeat what I just said. 3/4 minus 1/4 gives us 2/4. And 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2, so I just saved us a step by changing it to 1/2 already. And then we'll bring down that minus 12. Now, in order to get x by itself, I'm going to add a 12 to both sides of the equation. These 12s cancel out, and now I have 1/2 x. And -5 plus 12. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Should be 7. On the left side. Yeah, 7. So now I have 1/2 x equals 7. What I can do here is I can divide by 1/2, or I can multiply by 2, because that will cancel out that 1/2. So I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides. The 1/2 and the 2 cancel out because they are inverse of each other. And then I am left with x equals 14. That is one way of completing this problem. So they said in the top, in the directions, show 2 different ways to solve this problem. We've done one way. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to try a different way of doing this problem. I'm going to rewrite the problem again. I'm going to draw a line actually so I don't get those 2 different ways mixed up. I'm going to write it down again. 1/4 x minus 5 equals 3/4 x minus 12. Okay? The other thing that we could do to this problem is right off the bat get rid of this fraction on both sides by multiplying the entire thing times 4. So we could multiply this whole thing by 4. Sorry, I said I wanted it to not go into the left side, and now it's going into the left side. But we can put parentheses around this and multiply by 4, put parentheses around this and multiply by 4. So that's what I'm going to do. in order to get rid of this fraction. So now I'm going to do the distributive property. 4 times 1/4 gives us 1. So then we're just left with x on the left side. 4 times -5 gives us -20. And that's going to be equal to, same thing on this side, we're going to use the distributive property. 4 times 3/4 x is going to leave us with 3x. And then 4 times -12 is going to be -48. Okay, again, this is 4 times 3/4. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 divided by 4 gives us 3. That's how I got this 3 here. 3x minus 48. Now I want to simplify further by getting my x's together. I'm going to subtract by x on both sides, so that I have -20 equals 2x minus 48. Now I want this x by itself, so I'm going to add 48 to both sides, add 48 to both sides. That leaves me with 2x on the right of the equation. And then on the left side, -20 plus 48 leaves me with 28, positive 28. I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides, and that leaves me with x equals 14. I got the same answer twice, so that's a good sign. That shows that no matter which way I do this problem, I'm going to get 14. So the solution is x equals 14. Normally, I would want you guys to check your work, but because we did it a second way and we still got the same answer, that's like another form of checking your work. So if you check your work by taking this 14 and plugging it into the original equation, that's great. That's a good way to check your work. But you can also check your work by solving it a different way and proving that no matter what way you do it, you're still going to get 14. So let's look at number 10 now. Which equation has the same solution as 1/2 times 6 minus x in parentheses plus 3x equals 1/2 x minus 8? Circle the letter of the correct answer. So in order to figure out which letter is correct, we're going to have to solve this problem to an extent. We're going to have to simplify it to see if we can figure out which one of these is correct. That's one way to do it. Another way we could do it is we could simplify this equation all the way till we figure out what x is, till we get x equals. So if we get x by itself, then we'll get x equals something. And we can take that x and plug it into each of these solutions and figure out which of these comes out with a true statement, with a true solution at the end. So that's two ways of doing it. I'm going to try first just to simplify this and see if I can get one of these answer choices by doing that. Okay, so 1/2, first thing I'm going to do here is distribute this using the distributive property. I'm going to distribute this 1/2. So 1/2 times 6 is 3, and 1/2 times -x is -1/2 x. And then I still have the plus 3 on the left side, so I'm just going to add plus 3x here. That is going to be equal to 1/2 x minus 8. Okay, so far I've done one step. Let's see if this matches anything I have over here on the left. It's looking close, but not quite. So far, the right side here is the same. The left side is looking close, but not yet. If we go further down, this one looks totally different. This one, the right side is the same, so maybe we'll try keeping the right side the same and like distinguish between A and C and see if the left side is something we can work out. And then B and D kind of just look totally different because even the right side doesn't match. So for now, I'm thinking that I can already narrow it down to A and C just based on looking at this right side. Let's simplify this further. We can simplify this further by combining our x's. So I have -1/2 x plus 3. That actually leaves us with 2.5 x. And then we still have that 3 there, and the 2.5 is positive because this 3 is more positive than this -1/2. And then the right side, we decided to leave it the same because it already matches some of our answer choices. Now, if we look at our answer choices here, A doesn't work because we ended up getting 2.5 x, not 2x. And if we look at C, we have 3 plus 5/2 x equals 1/2 x minus 8. Well, this looks really close. So what we can do is we can look back at this 2.5 x and say, can we write this another way? And we can. Right now it is in a whole number and fraction form. We can rewrite this in a mixed number. We're going to do that as I did on page 126. I kind of gave you guys an example of that, but I'm going to refresh your memory one more time. So what we would do is multiply the whole number times the denominator. So 2 times 2, and then add the numerator. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. And then we keep the bottom the same. We keep the denominator the same. So then that leaves us with 5/2 x. So our 2.5 x is equal to 5/2 x. So we're going to bring down the rest of the equation because the rest of it we want to keep it the same because it's already close to an answer choice. And based on that, we have found that C is the correct letter choice. Because you see how those match? Now it says Haley chose A as the correct answer. How did she get that answer? I'm assuming that she made a mistake with her distributive property up here. Maybe she forgot to multiply the 1/2 times the x. So then here, instead of having -1/2 x, maybe she just had minus x. And if this was just minus 1x, then this would be minus 1x plus 3, which would give you 2x. So really, yeah, Haley made a mistake with the distributive property. She forgot to multiply that half times that -x. So that's what I'm going to write here. Haley made a mistake doing the distributive property. Haley made a mistake doing the distributive property. She forgot to multiply the 1/2 times -x on the left side of the equation. Okay, she forgot to multiply the 1/2 times -x on the left side of the equation. Okay, so that completes our lesson for today. Today, your assignment is to complete pages 145 and 146 out of your Ready Math practice book. Let me take a look at those really quick. Okay, so I've opened up my practice book to page 145 and 146, and I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and do number 2 just to do an example out of here. Don't forget to do number 1, but I'm going to do number 2 just to get you guys started on your assignment for today. So it says solve the equation for x, 3x minus 5 equals 1/2 x plus 2x. So 3x minus 5 equals 1/2 x plus 2x. First thing we can do is, there's multiple ways to do this problem, but the right side of the equation has x's already on it, so I think that maybe I would just combine those, and that would give me 2.5 x equals 3x minus 5. That's just one way to do it. The next thing I would do, because I'm combining x's, the next thing I would do is subtract my 3x on both sides. And these would cancel out, and I would have -5 left, which equals 2.5 minus 3, which is -1/2 x. And then, in order to get rid of this 1/2, I could divide by 1/2, or I can multiply by the inverse of this. And I'm going to multiply by -2/1. Multiply by -2/1. This -2/1 cancels out that 1/2. And I'm left with x equals -2/1 times -5. This over 1 doesn't really matter because everything is automatically over 1. It's kind of imaginarily there. So we don't really need to even think about this anymore, right? Anything over 1 is a normal number. So negative 2 times negative 5 actually ends up giving us 10, and so our solution would be x equals 10. Of course, the best thing to do in any of these types of problems is to check your answer. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my original equation. 3x minus 5 equals 1/2 x plus 2x. And I'm going to plug in 10 for everywhere that there is an x. Okay, so I've plugged in my 10 everywhere that there is an x. This is the same thing as multiplication. Anywhere that there is a parenthesis and a number directly attached to it, that means to multiply. So 3 times 10 is 30. Then I'm going to bring down my minus 5. Then I have 1/2 times 10. 1/2 of 10 is 5. Bring down my plus sign, and then I have 2 times 10, which is 20. So I have 30 minus 5 equals 5 plus 20. And 30 minus 5, that's 25. And 5 plus 20, that's also 25. This is a true statement. And true statements mean that you have proven your work to be true. Your work should be accurate. So go ahead and complete this page. And don't forget the back side, page 145 and 146. And I think you guys are going to do great. Let me know if you have any questions.